Hello, this is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. You know, quite a few people I talk to don't seem to know very much about northern British Columbia. So I thought I'd travel up that way, and I've made several videos of this part of the province. And this video is mainly about the community of Vanderhoof. But just before we get going into it, let's just get a quick orientation to this whole northern country of northern British Columbia. This video is basically about the community of Vanderhoof down here along the Yellowhead Highway number 16. And we did other videos of northern British Columbia. For example, Fort St. James, not very far away from Vanderhoof, and Prince Rupert and Kitimat. And we made a video on Highway 37 here, and all part of northern British Columbia. And it runs up, Highway 37 runs up and joins the Alaska Highway. Many people who go to Alaska come up from the south on the lower right here, from Prince George. They come across west on the Yellowhead to about the community of Terrace in that region there. And then they swing north on Highway 37, and I call this the shortcut to Alaska. And I've made a video on this highway as well. So they're all in the playlist on northern British Columbia. And take a look at them. But anyway, let's go back and start where this video is about, and that's the community of Vanderhoof. You know, in most of my videos, I'm a happy tourist. But every once in a while, you run across a few things that get under your skin. And when I visited Vanderhoof, it's a fine place. But I ran across something, and every community and areas have things that will get under your skin once in a while. And that's what happened to me in this video. An hour west of Prince George is the next sizable community, Vanderhoof, and it is in the Nechako Valley. About a half hour north of town is the National Historic Site called Fort St. James. I made a good video of it, and you can find it on the same BC playlist on YouTube. I made big money on the chicken races up there. This whole northern region of BC is primarily forests and lumbering, but the soil around Vanderhoof here is a little heavier than back in the more treed area of Prince George. As a result, some of the land has been cleared in this area, and there are some fields, good-sized fields. This is land being cleared. The forest is cut and piled to be dried. When the piled trees are dry, they are burned, usually in a safer time when snow is on the ground. But here are the results. More open land for pastures. Mostly hay, alfalfa is grown for the livestock. Some land is put in grain like barley, and there are some honeybee operations in the area as well. Historically, the indigenous people in this region have been called the Carrier people. More recently, the preferred name is the Daketh First Nation. The subgroup of Daketh people in the immediate area of Vanderhoof is called the Saikuz First Nation. Visitor information is right along the highway. There are a few historic buildings to go through. See the sign on the building on the left, and you can get a bite at the OK Cafe. One of the buildings is a museum about the story of a couple of local ranchers, Rick and Gloria Hobson, who were also writers. One of their books, titled Nothing Too Good for a Cowboy, became a national weekly CBC television series for 2 years. For an old cowboy like me, I loved the series that was based on ranching in the Vanderhoof area in the 1940s. This is the cast. The guy on the top right, Yannick Bison, later starred in a long-running CBC TV show called Murdoch Mysteries. They have a nice new visitor center. Whoa, look at this big sculpture. It is a beautiful piece of hardwood sculpture that symbolizes the province of British Columbia and this Vanderhoof country. It is 12 meters long and 3 meters high. Carver Peter Rodseth thought that he could carve it out in 6 months. It took him 6 years. The mural is carved from Red Alder, the Pacific Northwest's most abundant hardwood. It is a softer wood, but imitates and sometimes outsells other hardwoods like cherry, mahogany, and walnut. You can work with red alder very easily and readily with hand and power tools. Red alder was once considered a nuisance tree because it grew back quickly over burned out and forest cleared areas. And it outcompeted other types of trees that were, at that time, considered to be commercially more valuable. People like it for smoking fish, and it makes a great campfire. The red alder close, tight wood grain enables it to readily accept stain and glue for plywood. If it is cut in the fall, the color is this nice golden yellow. Also at the visitor center is a display of a special kind of fish called a sturgeon. Sturgeons date back to the age of the dinosaurs and still grow up to 2 and 3 meters long. These giant fish will live to be up to 100 years old. And one of the big problems is that they have to live for 20 to 30 years before they're mature enough to lay eggs and reproduce. And a lot can happen to you in 20 to 30 years, especially if you're a fish. Vanderhoof is headquarters for efforts to avoid extermination of the white sturgeon from the nearby Nechako River watershed. Here's a page from one of their pamphlets. Here are some factors that affect whether or not these sturgeon can survive in the future. Water quantity and water velocity, both have been really affected by dams. The Kenny Dam on the Nechako River was the largest earth dam in the world when it was built in the 1950s. And it's an example of this very thing. The Nechako River naturally flows eastward past Vanderhoof to junction with the Fraser River and goes south to the Pacific Delta at Vancouver. The Kenny Dam raised water, so some of it now flowed westward toward Kitimat. Disruption of water flows has been disastrous for salmon, sturgeon, and people. And in this case, all of the benefit for a foreign company located hundreds of kilometers away. Oh, Canada, when will you wake up and smell the coffee burning? Spawning beds and migration patterns were changed. Other things also threatened the sturgeon. Predators like mink and bear and other animals take their toll. And most of all, humans in their fishing. Overfishing. It's been disastrous for the sturgeon across the world. Our appetite for sturgeon eggs has been merciless. Since historical times, we have eaten roe, R-O-E, which are the eggs of sturgeon and other fish. We make it into a food or a spread, and we call it caviar. We like to impress our rich and important friends with what we consider a delicacy. I'm telling you, neighbor, maybe it's time we started to change our eating habits before we kill off everything on the planet. This pamphlet shows the life cycle of the sturgeon. The yellow blocks on the left indicate high priority times to help the sturgeon. The red blocks along the bottom show even more important critical times. The project is working to get the fish to the juvenile stage because then there is the chance that they can become adults. But remember, we're looking at a 15, 20 to 30 year period here. But once adults, then they can do their spawning. And the process in the life cycle goes from a high priority to a critical priority, getting those eggs to hatch and reach the young larva stage until they reach juvenile. And like I said, once the fish reach juvenile, there is at least a chance for survival. The battle to save both the salmon and the sturgeon needs to occur in two equally important arenas. We have been talking about the one area. It is the physical work required for restoration. Building new habitat, making new spawning areas, building fish ladders and fish hatcheries and things like that. The second arena is also critically important, the area of public awareness and education. Changing legislation has already reached the Supreme Court of British Columbia. Who needs to have the greater say in the control of the water of the Nechako Basin? Should it be the government? Should it be the foreign aluminum company? Or should it be the people who live their daily lives along the waters of the basin? Don't underestimate the size of the Nechako water basin. The total drainage area is 1.5 times larger than Vancouver Island and over 8 times larger than the Canadian province of Prince Edward Island. It is unbelievable that a country, Canada, would permit a huge area like this to be turned upside down by a single company. Further, it is even more unbelievably absurd Canada would turn over basic control of such a vast area to a single foreign company. The foreign aluminum company actually owns Kenny Dam and therefore controls basically all water in the basin. And furthermore, it generates electricity for its power plant on the coast, and excessive electricity produced by Canadian waters is then sold by the foreign company back to Canada, to British Columbia. Give your head a shake. Only a Canadian would make a deal like that. What will happen at the end of the rainbow? Who should have greater voice in the management over the waters of the Nechako Basin? In the past, it has been government and the foreign aluminum company. But like similar situations elsewhere in the world, the voice of the people is becoming louder and more influential. You know, the Nechako Basin is very much like the Columbia Basin in southern British Columbia. They're very similar in that they've been used and utilized by outside influences. In the case of the Columbia Basin, it's been the United States. In the case of the Nechako Basin here, it has been the aluminum company in Kitimat. So take a look at the Columbia Basin videos. It'll do your soul some good. It tells you something about Canadians. And I'm not blaming the United States or the aluminum company in Kitimat for us mismanaging our country. But you know who the enemy is? Let me show you. Come along. You need to look in the mirror. Yes, sir. Sometimes you just have to look in the mirror to see the enemy. Whoa, that's me. The point is that when it comes to responsible stewardship over our own country, too often we have failed miserably. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. No, you know, I don't care if you enjoyed it or not. Did you learn anything? Did it give you any food for thought? Another perspective. That's what's important, just as much as enjoying another trip down the road. Anyway, follow along. Subscribe to this channel, and that'll help us bring more videos. This is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. So long for now. We're rolling down the road.